We're in Colossians chapter 3, starting in verse 8. We may not get to everything, but remember what Paul is writing to the church of Colossae. That you ought to thank God for a faithful church. And praise God that there are. And what Paul is saying is, why you should be thankful is they're far in between to find one. And when God places you in one, thank God for the faithful church. Thank God for the faithful servants, those that are faithful to God. They are a tremendous blessing just by serving God. People don't realize it sometimes, but just by serving God and being faithful, they are a blessing to others. And it's all possible because we have a faithful God. And what Paul is saying is you don't want to lose that. And in order for us not to lose that, for us to remain faithful, there are things that a Christian needs to leave behind. And in these next couple verses, and man, he hits the nail right on the head. If you notice in verse 8 and from the verses on, what we leave behind basically is what we say to one another. How we speak. We ought to be cautious in what we say. More importantly, there are things that we must not say. Man, it's hard for some of us not to talk, though. Maybe stepping on your toes this evening. But there are some things that we must guard our lips from. And it's easy to fall in that trap because we used to live that way. And deceive people and probably not even realizing it. It's at one point, and I don't like getting ahead of myself, but it's at one point where Paul is going to say is when you do business transactions, don't lie to one another. In other words, don't try to get more out of somebody by leaving out some things or puffing up something that it's not. So we have to be careful what we say to one another. More than ever, we need to be cautious, and I need to be cautious what's said in the pulpit. What is said from the Word of God. And make sure that it is of God. But in verse 8, what a Christian needs to leave behind, and I'm telling you, if we don't leave these things behind, it's going to hurt our behind. And God will chastise us for instructing us not to do something if we do it anyway. It's going to hurt us in the long run. You know, I was laughing at the title this evening and all this because if you look at Colossians 3:8, it starts with but. If we don't do this, it's going to hurt our rear ends. But now he also put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of your mouth. We're going to get into each one of these, and I'm not going to list everything this evening, and we're not going to go through all the verses that I'm about to read. But we need to be emphasized in the content when we read these words, angry, malice, and filthy communication. What Paul is saying is, these are the things that are coming out of your mouth. And it needs to stop. It needs to be left behind. A Christian does not need these things in their life. You don't need to carry these things with you on your journey that God has you on. Lie not one to another, seeing that you have put off the old man with his deeds. And that's the verse I was just referring to. It has to do with when you deal with people. Don't lie to them just to get that extra dollar. Don't leave things out. Don't lie to someone just to benefit yourself. And verse 10, and put on the new man, which is renewed in knowledge after the image of him that created him. We're there in neither Greek or Jew, circumcision, nor uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond nor free, but Christ is all and in all. Put on, therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, bowels of mercies, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long-suffering, forbearing one another and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. And above all these things, put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness. And let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to which also ye are called in one body. And be ye thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. And whatsoever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord, giving thanks to God and the Father by him. Lord, we're so grateful that you have brought us together in one place to praise your name together, to hear from you. And Lord, as we go forward, let us leave the things behind that you've instructed us to. Let us leave these things behind to move forward and to stay on the path that you have us on. And on our journey, Lord, you are telling us there are things that we don't need. The one thing we do is you. So, Lord, I pray that we are drawn closer to you this evening. And if someone is lost, that you would draw them to your Son. In Jesus' name, amen. He says, but now ye also put off all these anger with malice, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communications out of your mouth. If you want to remain faithful, these are the things that you will do. And the things he's asking us to do, the things he's telling us to do. You need to leave these things behind. Don't take them with you on your journey. Don't take these things with you when you're trying to spread the gospel to someone. Don't take these things to work. Don't take these things home with you. If you want a faithful, loving home, these are things that you will not bring up. These are things that you won't say. These things you won't do. And Paul is telling us this because it's so easy for us, we want to do these things. In all reality, it's going to harm us. And what these things are, if I can say, things that will puff ourselves up, but it will cost someone else. It will hurt someone else. And in the long run, if you haven't heard what I said, it's going to hurt you. You may think that you're hurting somebody else by doing these things. But as a Christian, it's going to hurt your testimony. It's going to hurt you personally in the long run. But now what he's saying is more than anything, and what Paul is saying, you can live without these things. You don't need them. So don't try to put it back in your life. There are some things that I've written down and scratched down that I can live without. Fawn and I, we talked about it. We can live without snow. If we never see snow again, we're okay with that. We can do without it. Some people love it, and some people, that's what they crave. But Fawn and I, we don't miss it one bit. If God never puts us in a place again that there's no snow, amen, we're okay with it. Leave that behind. I can leave behind mosquitoes. Man, I don't know about you, but around this area at night, 6, 7 o'clock, it's dinner time for the mosquitoes here. I was working on Fawn's car, and I almost had it done. I only had 2 or 3 more things to go, and, man, I had to go in the house because I could not finish. One job Harmony had was getting the mosquitoes off my face and everything like that, and there was just too many. I can live without commercials. Man, I am someone that's now used to that. We've been spoiled not to have some programs that don't have commercials. And now we did away with some things, and now we are bearing some commercials that are coming on TV. I can live without seeing Michigan lose. Lord, let that be. That I don't see Michigan lose again. That'll be okay with me. But what I'm saying is, and it's kind of comical, but we can live without these things. There are things that we don't need in our life. And Paul is saying, why would you want to place these things in your life? You're a new creature now. God has blessed you. He has given you a life of righteousness. He has made you whole. Don't put these things in your life. More than anything, these are things that you must not carry with you. You're going to give the gospel and you're going to take these things with you? It's going to hurt your testimony. You're not probably going to reach anybody if you take these things with you. More than anything, these are the things you must not carry with you. Leave all these things behind you. We, the Sears family, Paul and I, over the years, we've taken a few vacations now. We've taken a plane, we've driven in a vehicle, and now, sad to say, but we got some things down pat when it comes to packing. There are some things when we pack to leave somewhere, there are things we leave behind. We don't need it. And we're very specific. If we're going by plane or if we're going by car, there's a routine that we have when we pack. When you fly by plane, which is quicker but costs a little bit more, we know that luggage, the airline we use, is free up to 50 pounds. We even have a scale at home that weighs luggage. And we don't care, and the airline don't care about the items, they just care about the weight. And there's some things that when we go to Michigan, for instance, there's some things we can leave here. We don't have to take it with us. There are some things we do want, and there are wants that we take with us. But if we take them with us, and for instance, that it overweighs on the plane, it's going to cost us. And is it worth the cost? And some of you may know, and I'm just going to say it, pastor's cheap. If I don't have to spend it, I don't want to spend it. Amen. Harmony and the kids know I have an app for every fast food place on my phone. I am not going to buy something whole price. I'm not going to do it if I don't have to. Why give extra money if you don't need to? But some things that we want, and it's not good for us, it's going to cost you. And sometimes it's going to cost you something that's more than you have, more than it should. But there are some things that we can leave behind. When we drive, there are just certain things that we don't take with us. Some of the less important things, we leave them behind. And what Paul is saying is, these things are not important. Matter of fact, it's poison to you. It will damage you. Don't take these things with you. Paul is saying on our Christian journey, there are things to leave behind. You don't need them. Things that you can live without. What is it that we can live without? Starts out anger. Don't take anger with you. Anger in this definition means movement. So in other words, don't even move in an angry way. You know what that means too, if you're not catching it? That means you shouldn't drive angry. You should not move angry. It's not going to be good for you. It's not going to turn out well. We got enough crazy drivers out there. We don't need somebody else to drive angry out there. But when it says about anger, it means even moving angry. Not to agitate someone. Not to have the desire to be angry. Ben Franklin, and I think we may have, anger is never without a reason, but seldom a good one. We think there's a good reason for it, but if we really think about it, there wasn't really a good reason for it. He also said, whatever is begun in anger ends in shame. You begin something in anger, it's going to wind up in shame. And that person is going to be the person that started with anger. That's who's going to be shameful. And it means a movement, a way that you drive, a way that you walk. If you go door-to-door knocking to go soul winning, don't bang on someone's door till they answer it. And don't be the one agitated when they answer the door. But some of us are like this. We're laughing because we've met people like this. And sometimes we get angry, and it's not our job, and I'm cautious what I say. Don't get angry when you're trying to win someone to the Lord and they don't accept Christ. Don't get angry with them. Let God deal with it. Some of us, God bless us, I call them car salesmen. We think that we need to close the deal when that's not our job. Brother Dan brought it up in his prayer. What I said this morning, our job is to witness. That's it. And don't get angry if someone doesn't see it your way. Let God deal with that person. And there's a way that people move angrily. And I'm about to say something, and Mom, if you're watching, I apologize ahead of time. But if you don't know, your kids, we all know that you have a tail. Mom's angry when she comes home or when she walks and her arm swings. There's just a certain way, and we used to talk about it at home. And if this is the first time, Mom, you're hearing about this, especially if Mom and Dad went by themselves and Mom came home and, man, if that right arm was swinging higher than usual, Mom's not happy about something. When we used to travel with my dad, we used to go on vacation, and we used to take 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks of June, we always would go somewhere. And as we traveled by car, we would stop at a hotel, and man, if Mom walked out of the hotel and that arm swung, we knew we weren't staying. We just knew that there was just a movement on that right arm that if it moved a certain way, Mom's not happy about something. We have some tells. We have some movements that, especially when we're witnessing to someone, don't roll your eyes at them. They don't know what you know. If they're not saved, they don't know the things of God. And some of us were like, well, don't you know? No, they don't. Be patient with people. Be patient with loved ones. At home, don't move angry. It's a known fact, I'm a Michigan fan, and I don't know, I haven't seen them in the house. Again, I haven't watched Michigan in a while, maybe because they started losing, but I used to be a passionate fan, even at home. Man, I was screaming at the TV, and it got to the point that Fawn's aunt and uncle got me for a Christmas gift foam bricks that said bad call, to throw them at the TV instead of throwing something else at the TV. But don't move in an angry way. At work, at home. It doesn't do anybody any good. Leave that behind. Wrath. Oh boy. Wrath. It means you got to a boiling point. It means that you have and people see that your face is getting red. It's like, if I can put this in an example, it's like seeing the hawk when he gets and turns green. And what I'm saying is, we shouldn't get to that point. What Paul is saying is you should deal with your issues before it gets to the boiling point. It might be getting home with some of you guys. But a lot of us, we don't express ourselves until that last straw is taken that broke the camel's back to say, we hold it in. And what Paul is saying, it shouldn't even be held in. We should not have wrath in our lives. We shouldn't have things that are festering in our lives to the point that it's making us boil over. And what Paul is saying, we shouldn't have this in our life. And as I said before, we shouldn't let it get to that boiling point. If there's issues, God deals with us and tells us how to deal with certain issues. And we shouldn't hold things in. We shouldn't have, that word I'm looking for, against someone. You are just holding it in. A grudge. And it just, every time we see that person, it just festers and festers and festers. If it's bothering you that bad, go to that person in love and talk about it before it gets to that point. Even in our marriage, husband, wife, we shouldn't get to that point of a boiling point. It's no good for anybody. There are some times that, and Fawn and I, we've been married long enough, there's some things that we may not know. I kid around, but sometimes it's all seriousness. There's things I tell Fawn, I can't read your mind. And Fawn comes back in a loving way is, you should. You see, there's other people do that. There are other wives that do that. But there are some things that Fawn's expressing away, and I look puzzled, and she's looking at me like I'm dumb, and don't you understand why I'm frustrated? And I tell her I don't. I can't read your mind. And then she'll say, no, it breaks the tension when I say that. Because then she starts smiling and it's like, well, you should be able to. Why can't you? And then we'll talk things over. But even with husbands, it shouldn't get to that point to your wives. You shouldn't get to that point that you're boiling over. And you're just going to go off on them. It shouldn't be there. And what Paul is saying, it shouldn't be there in the first place because it should have been dealt with a long time ago. Amen. So this is something that shouldn't even be brought up. So how do we get rid of wrath especially? Don't let it get to that point. Go to God with these things. Then we have malice. I couldn't help it, Brother James, who's back there, but we've been talking about this. Malice at the palace. If I could get to that slide. There was a basketball game Detroit Pistons had and hosted the Indiana Pacers team. There's only about 54 seconds left to go. This really happened. Some numbskull, someone in the fans thought it would be cute to dump an alcoholic beverage on one of the Indiana Pacers on their body. And it broke out into a big brawl. It will go down in history now as malice at the palace. That someone willingly broke the law to do something stupid that affected everyone, even themselves. And what malice is willingly knowing the law and breaking it. I've used some analogies in Sunday school class about how Christians deal with some things. And if we know that breaking the law, for instance, if someone wants to boycott a place that does abortions, realize if you break their window, you're breaking the law. You're not supposed to do things in malice. If you're going to protest, do it a legal way. don't willingly, and I'm talking to Christians, don't willingly know the law and break it to try and justify your belief. Did you hear what I said this morning about Jesus? He went to Jerusalem and he went peacefully. And he told the disciples, now watch. You're going to be a witness that I am innocently going to Jerusalem. But there are going to be charges brought against me that I didn't do. And Jesus was making a point to them, when you're on this journey, when you're with me, don't break the law. We are to respect it. And what happened here at the palace, it happened November 19, 2004. And after this happened, the NBA suspended 9 players. Now remember, it was one person that thought he had a bright idea to go ahead and pour something on someone else. And after all this, there was a fight that broke out. Players were fighting the fans. And when this happened, all this happened, after the game, the NBA suspended 9 players for a total of 146 games. There's a movie out that I didn't realize it affected these people's lives more than I realized. Even the players. This one night, this one act of illegality, if that's a word, someone doing an illegal act, just by thinking it was funny, 9 NBA players got suspended for 146 games, leading to the players losing $11 million. 5 players were charged with assault, and eventually sentenced to a year of probation, a community service. 5 fans also faced assault charges, banned them for games for the rest of their life. All because of one person breaking the law, thinking it was funny, thinking that he was going to get puffed up by other people by doing this to the opposing team. And it cost them more than he realized. It even cost other lives, their lifestyles, their home, all because someone acted in malice. If we as Christians, if we act or do something in malice, we may have cost someone's soul. And then many other souls after that. Who knows that one person leading to Christ that we put malice against, of what kind of Christian they would have become. So when we do things, even with good intentions, we don't need to break the law to do God's work. Amen. We do not need to break the law to do the work of God. God will provide. He tells us to respect the laws of the land. Now, we can take stand against, if they're going against our religion and so that, but we are not to willingly do things to puff ourselves up. Look what I've done. And look back, and it cost people's lives, even your own. I haven't said this in a while, but my mom, she took care of me breaking the law. 4 or 5 years old. I'll never forget that spool of thread. And to be honest with you, I didn't realize what I did. Boy, Mom sure told me what I did was wrong. She came home, and like she always does, she goes over her receipt. She wants to make sure that she wasn't overcharged. She has her coupons and everything ready. And man, Mom, she knew that receipt. She knew what was in the cart. And she looked and she said, I didn't pay for a spool of thread. And she made me go back. And I've told you this story before, but it'll still stick out in my mind. That the manager felt sorry for me. Because I did. I apologized so profusely, if that's the word I can use. But man, I was so sorry. And tears were just coming to my eyes, and that meant everything. And the manager was like, why are you doing this to your own son? And my mom said, so he don't steal again. It worked because I didn't steal anything else since then. But when you commit malice, you have a crime against yourself. You're ruining people's lives. If you go out on your own, break the law to do something for God, you're not doing anything for God when you do that. You're doing things for yourself. And it's not going to do anybody any good. But we do have a right, Mom and Dad, to correct those things that are wrong in our children. If they steal some things, we should not sweep it under the rug. If we know about it, we need to correct it. And man, Mom sure did correct it. Slander. Again, notice all these things that Paul is saying are things that we say. Things that come out of our mouth. We're not to slander. That means not to give false testimony. Not to gossip. And false testimony is gossiping if you don't know the whole truth. If you're telling someone of something that you just heard, and you don't know if it's the truth, you are slandering someone. We should not gossip. There's an old story I like to read to you about slander. I don't know if you heard this or not, about the feathers, the story about the pillow of feathers. But it goes like this. In a small town somewhere in Eastern Europe lived a nice man with a nasty problem. He loved to talk about other people. He couldn't help himself. And whenever he heard a story about somebody he knew and sometimes about someone he didn't know, he just had to tell all of his friends. Since he was in business, he heard quite a lot of rumors and stories, and he loved attention that he got for telling on other people or telling others what he heard about others. It was sometimes embellished when he told the story to others, embellished it even more. And he did this to a good-hearted man. He kind of knew it was wrong, but it was too tempting. And the gossip was just too juicy. In any case, most of what he told didn't really happen. And many of his stories were innocent and entertaining. But again, one day he found out something weird but true about another businessman in town. And of course, he felt compelled to tell others, to share what he knew about his colleagues, who would tell their friends, and he told other people they knew, and who told their wives, and he spoke with their friends and neighbors, and it went around town. And this good man, his name, his reputation was ruined. And he went to go see a rabbi. The man realized what he has done. And what he had told was an embellished story. And it ruined the guy's life. And it bothered the man that told these stories. So he went to a rabbi. And he told the rabbi all of what he's done. And he says, "What can I do to make this right?" And the rabbi said, "I want you to go home." Talking to the man that did the slandering. "I want you to go home, get a pillow that has feathers in it, and bring it back to me." The man did as the rabbi told him to do. He goes, "Here's the pillow, here's the feathers. What can I do? What can I do to make this thing right?" And the rabbi, he took the pillow and he ripped it open. He let all the feathers fly out. And this rabbi told him that you can't take everything that you said back. It's going to be impossible. Again, he cut this pillow, and the pillows and the feathers came out, and they landed on the chairs and on the bookcase, on the clock, on the cat, on the floor. And the rabbi and the man with the knife and a lot They flew out the window. And the rabbi waited 10 minutes. Then he said to the man, I want you to go and pick all those feathers up. But what he was saying is the feathers represented all the words that you said to this guy. And he told him, I want you, just like the words that you spread that weren't true, all those words are these feathers, and go and pick them up. And the man stared at the rabbi in disbelief. That's impossible. The ones here in the room I might get, most of them, but the ones that flew out the window are gone. He said, Rabbi, I can't do that. And you know it. And the rabbi said, yes, and nodded gravely. This is how it is. Once you spread a rumor, once you slander someone, once you gossip about someone, once a secret leaves your mouth, you don't know where it's going to end up. And it flies on the wings of the wind, and you can never get it back. That's what slandering does. So if any of us have the inkling of gossiping about someone else, remember the words that you're speaking, they're not true. You're not going to know where it's going to wind up. You know all the time, promise me you're not going to say anything, and the person says, I'll promise, and you know they're going to say every word that you say. You don't know where those words are going to go. And in the long run, it's going to hurt the person that you're gossiping about. And it's going to hurt your reputation as well. Don't slander against others' people. Filthy communication. Foul speaking. Cuss words. Most of you know I worked in a factory. There were some words that were said. It got so bad that the foreman had a meeting with the whole plant. And our bright union stewards, you can't tell us not to say these things because it's shop talk. And God bless our foreman that we had at the time. He said, yes, I can. He even in the meeting, I kid you not, brought a dictionary in. And he says, if you can't find any good words, look in this dictionary for one. Amen. You don't need to use the foul language. Right. Even in a factory. It doesn't look good on you, and it doesn't look good for our company. When you use foul language, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for you. It doesn't look good for the church that you belong to. It doesn't look good for your family. These things that come out of your mouth can do so much damage. The things that Paul is telling us to leave behind are things that, if we do take with us, it's damaging. Damaging to the person that you're talking about and damaging to you as an individual. But so much damage can be done by someone just by opening their mouth the wrong way. And Paul is warning us not to take these things with us. Leave them behind. If you want to remain faithful, there are some things that I'm not proud of that I used to say. As I said, I was in that shop as well. Well, you know what? And this is the God's honest truth. When I got saved, things changed. I can honestly say I've never heard my daughter or my son say a cuss word. Not once. I can honestly say that. We start watching what comes into our home, what we do in front of our kids. Now, my kids have heard Dad say some words that I'm not proud of. But thank God that when he saved me, things changed. Things changed not only in me, but in our household. It got to the point that we were watching a movie. If our kids heard the word stupid, they would, "Oh, Dad, did you hear what that said?" When you leave these things behind and you don't bring them to your household don't say these things. It's not passed on to your children. As your pastor, when I have phone calls, I let the person know if I'm on speakerphone or if someone's in the room. And every time there's a private conversation, I don't even talk in front of my wife. I certainly don't talk in front of our children. Dad goes in the office, and God bless Fawn. If it's something I don't need to know, I don't need to know. That's between you, God, and the person. And that's the way it should be. I am glad, and listen, in all sincerity, I am glad I'm married to a wife that doesn't spread what's told to the pastor. She doesn't spread who comes to the house. In all reality, and it humbles me, that when she frequently talks to one of you, she rarely calls me, her husband, by name. She says, "I'll see what pastor says. I'll bring it by pastor." And by her doing that, or what she is doing, she realizes the sincerity, the way that we need to protect our testimony. She carries herself in a way that will protect you. If you don't realize that, she's protecting you. She's definitely protecting me. And to be honest with you, she's protecting the church. And she's protecting the home. So there are some things, and I'm so glad that I am married to a lady, that when I'm talking with someone on the phone, who are you talking to? What was it about? So simply say, is it a church matter? Yes. Enough said. So what time's dinner? I don't know if you can make it faster, you can make it yourself. She says. She will say that. After I say that, so God bless her, I didn't get the okay, but a godly lady here gave Fawn a towel that has a saying on it. What does it say? Press this button for the chef, and if the chef doesn't show up, make it yourself. But as we speak, let us realize words matter. The way we carry our conversation matters. In Proverbs 8:7, just a few more verses I want to read. Proverbs 8:7, a good proverb. You know, for those that may not know, proverbs are things that gives us wisdom, that gives us godly advice. And in Proverbs 8:7, it says, "For our mouth shall speak truth, and wickedness is an abomination to my lips." When we go out and gossip, we go tell the gospel. I got that word gospel in my mind. We shouldn't gossip, but when we go give the gospel, we have to realize that we're speaking truth. When you speak of Jesus, you're speaking truth. You need to leave everything else behind. The anger, the slandering, the malice. When you're speaking about Christ, you're speaking about truthful things. So if you're bringing up God and you're living a godly testimony, if you have these things in your life, you're hurting your own testimony. In John 14:6, one of the most famous verses that Jesus said, Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. When we're saved, we have Jesus in us. We have the truth in us. And Paul is saying, don't bring other things into your life. Don't bring anger. And again, these are things, and Paul just hits the nail right in the head. He goes right after it. If you want to remain faithful, watch what you say. More importantly, what not to say. When I was growing up and Mom and Dad had 5 kids, people, when we go to people's houses, they called us the army children. We knew we didn't speak unless Mom and Dad told us to speak. One thing we did not dare do is ask for a beverage or something to eat without being asked first. And if we did so, Mom would be more than swing that arm at us. But as the years go by, and I say this with humility, I really do. There's just a difference between the way my mom and dad raised kids than their own brothers and sisters did. Majority of my mom's brothers and sisters, both of them, hardly have anybody of their kids in church. God is rarely spoken of. God is not believed in some of the homes. So living the way that the Bible instructs us to do is helpful in our testimony. It benefits not only you, but your children. It benefits your church. Benefits your home. It benefits your workplace. So as we learn what Paul has told us to do, if I could just read that one verse over again. In Colossians chapter 3, in verse 8, more than anything but, that word but means more than anything. This is what you would leave behind to be a faithful servant of God. But now ye also put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication, and out of your mouth. And the next verse I just want to touch on: lie not one to another, seeing that ye have put off these old man with his deeds. Again, I said this in the beginning of the sermon and in the middle. When you're dealing with people, even in business transactions, don't embellish the truth. Don't try and embellish what you're selling. If it's not really what it seems to be, don't lie to get an extra dollar out of it. Especially Christians. Don't lie to your other brothers. Don't do this in the business world. Don't do this to your neighbor. Don't do this, and it's sad to say that I have to say this, but I'm going to say it anyways because people do it, to your own family members. Don't lie when you're doing a business transaction. When there's something that you're selling and something that you're selling to someone else. Just the benefits. We serve a mighty God. And we should know what I'm trying to say, what my point is, that God will do all the provision. He will provide. Don't try to get something out of somebody by embellishing the truth. What you're really doing is breaking the law. We've been instructed not to do these things. So as we stand together,